In today's tutorial, we're going to be working with the Hello Pumpkin Mould from IOD and a bunch of textures, some paints, and the IOD clay, the air dry clay, to make that adorable pumpkin baby picture frame. I'm Peggy, and welcome to our channel. So let's get started. The picture frames that we're using are some that we custom made. And right now we are going to be applying salt wash and chalk paint to the sides of our picture frame. So I just mixed a little bit of salt wash with some chalk paint, and it's a color, it's called antique white. And what the salt wash and paint does is it adds a primer to the picture frame. It adds a white color and it also adds texture. As I'm stippling around the whole picture frame, I get this really nice texture that's going to be really fun when we add some other paints and glazes on top of it. So the front of these picture frames are 3 inches wide. And the reason we made them 3 inches wide is specifically so that we could add IOD molds to the sides of the top. Actually, let's call it the top of these picture frames. So I am continuing to stipple and add a little more texture all around on the 3-inch top of this picture frame. And I want it to have lots of texture so that when I put down the other paint colors and I do a wash, that I am going to have this really, really super patina. The Hello Pumpkin mold from IOD has a big pumpkin, a little pumpkin, and a bunch of pumpkin leaves. And we're going to use just about all of them on this picture frame. So the first thing I did is I am actually putting some cornstarch in this mold. It's got a lot of detail, and I want to make sure that my stem and everything comes out really easily after I put the clay in. So it takes quite a bit of clay to do that main one. And the nice thing about the IOD molds is it tells you right along the side how much clay you'll need by weight, and if you were using resin, how much resin you would need also. I am using a palette knife to really smooth out the back so that I will have really good contact with my frame. And I'm also going to use this palette knife to cut part of this pumpkin off because I want it to kind of just be over in the corner, and I definitely don't have enough space for a pumpkin this big on the picture frame, but I still want the scale of the big pumpkin on my picture frame. I am building a vine up the top of the frame and from the pumpkin up to the top. And for the vine, I am using the big long stem that is in the original Heirloom Roses mold. And I'm going to make two of them because I would like the stem to be used as a vine up both sides of my picture frame. And again, I'm just using a palette knife to just smooth it out. And I did already put the cornstarch in there so that it would be super easy to remove it because it's long and skinny and I do not want it to break as I'm taking it out. As I work on my design, I cut pieces of leaves to make them smaller and just use parts of them. I cut this pumpkin to fit into the space between the two main pumpkins. And I just keep working my design till it kind of looks natural with the leaves going up the top of the leaves being attached to the little stems or the vine and going up to the top of my picture frame. Here is one place where my little leaf stem was pretty tricky to get it out, but I did manage to get it out, and it is perfectly laid on top of that pumpkin. And I haven't glued anything down yet. I'm kind of letting it get a little bit of a crust on it before I glue it down to the board. So right now I'm just making these leaves. I'm just using actually parts of the leaves because I want the leaves to be tiny because they're going up pretty thin little stem, and I do not want them to distract from the beautiful pumpkins. Once I have all the leaves that I think look appropriate and all the pumpkin parts, it is time to glue it down. So I am using heavy body gel from Pentart, and that's one of the reasons I have the glove on, because I do not want to get that heavy body gel on my fingers at all, because everything will stick to me. So I am going to carefully lift each piece and glue it down until the whole thing is all set. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint it, put its first coat of paint on it. And the reason I paint it right after I glue it down is I want to slow down the drying time a little bit, because I don't want to have a lot of cracks. And you'll see at the end I do get one big crack, but I just left it. I said, that kind of enhances the design. And there you are. You see all those leaves and the pumpkins, and it's ready to let it dry, except for I decide I want one more little leaf. So I'm gonna take that last leaf and put it back on the stem. I try to leave as many of the castings in place as I glue them down one at a time. And I'm using the palette knife again to add the heavy body gel to the back of the casting. The reason for the palette knife is you can get a really nice smooth coverage, but also you can get into those little spots that are a little harder to get with a just with glue or with a brush. And I try to smooth it out really, really well, so I have lots of contact once that pumpkin hits the frame. And it's got a little bit of crust on it, but you also still want to be real careful not to press too hard and lose some of that amazing detail of that mold. So you could see that the vines, they stayed in that shape that I formed them into as they were drying, which is perfect. And then they're a little tricky to get that heavy body gel on the back of them without them twisting and turning all over the place. But with a little patience, we got it done. And one by one, I glued every casting down to the picture frame front. And the ones that I have that are overlapping and on top of the pumpkins, the leaves, I added extra body gel to them because I really didn't want them to crack. You'll see where the pumpkin goes from thick to thin pretty quickly. That's where you can get a crack pretty easily. Now that all my castings are glued down, I am going to paint the entire frame with the first coat of paint. And what I'm using again is Wise Owl chalk paint, and the color that I'm using is Antique Villa. It's a very, very slightly warm white, and it's perfect for this type of vintage casting look that you get when you have that much texture. And I just go over the whole thing with one solid coat, and then I let that dry. Once the chalk paint is dry, I add a coat of varnish, just clear varnish over every bit of it. And the reason I do the clear varnish is because I am going to put another coat of paint over this pumpkin, and then I'm going to actually wipe some of it away. I'm going to wipe it away with a wet cloth, and I do not want to go past the white coat of paint and bring it all the way down to the clay layer. So I use varnish in between each layer. Once the varnish was dry, I added a coat of gray linen, which is also a chalk synthesis paint from Wise Owl Paint. Being careful to really get into all those little crevices, because when I wipe it away, I really want to see some of the darker paint inside the little crevices where it really will bring out the detail. And I just paint the whole thing. Even though I'm going to wipe it back, I paint the whole frame, all of the castings, the sides, everything. Once that gray linen paint is almost dry, I wipe some of it away, and I'm careful not to wipe too much of it away. So I do roll up and it's a wet wipe, and I roll it up to be so I just have a little bit at the end. And I just wipe it away so that I can see some of the white. And once I am happy with that, I am going to let the whole thing dry. And after it's dry, I am going to put on another coat of varnish. The Hello Pumpkin Mould was part of a limited edition release from IOD last fall. I still have a few available on my website, which I will link to in the description. The Heirloom Rose mold has not been available for a long time, so that might be more difficult. But IOD has come out with several different molds that have stems that would be real easy to use if you wanted to create that pumpkin stem look. I will also go ahead and put a link to any of the other products that I used. Now you could actually just varnish it and leave it like that if that was the look you were going for. But I want some more depth of texture, and I want to have more color and more tone. So once my coat of varnish dried, I am taking Wise Owl Black Walnut Glaze, and I am putting it on with a brush, trying really hard to get it in all the little cracks and crevices of the pumpkins and the leaves. And then I simply wipe it back. The finishing touches for my picture frame are made with Pentart Antique Paste in the color brass. And I am just hitting all of the high spots with the antiquing paste. If I add a little too much, then I just wipe it back. But what I usually do is I put a little bit on my finger, I wipe some of it off, and then I put it on to the castings. It creates a really nice brassy look without being overly metallic. And I love the way it finishes off this pumpkin picture frame. I also go around the edges with the antiquing paste to kind of really pull the design in. And just a little bit of the Pentart Antiquing Paste goes a super long way. You use very, very little, but it enhances, it really finishes off the design. Comes in lots of different colors, and it's just a perfect enhancement for finishing off picture frames. I will also link in the description. And here it is, all done. Now all I have to do is get a piece of glass cut to the size of the frame and have a picture developed, and it is all ready for display.